We are not alone. They are among us. As the skies light up, they believe we are blissfully unaware. But this activity by non-human extraterrestrial technology is capturing the attention of humans.
My name is Dale, and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. Today, I'm really excited. We're going to go ahead and bring Steve Bassett on stage. It looks like we have about an hour, so I'm going to kind of push a little faster than normal. Steve, I want to welcome you back to the channel again. Let me tell you something. No one has worked harder for disclosure than you have. I mean, you've been fighting for almost 3 decades, I believe. What, 28 years, something like that? 29 now?
Approaching 30, yeah.
Approaching 30. You organized the 2013 citizens hearings, which was at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. You founded PRG, which is Paradigm Research Group. You co-founded with Dan Harari, the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. You know, you're like the Energizer Bunny on steroids. I don't think anybody has done more podcasts. Any single human being has done more podcasts than you have. And so I want to say thank you. No one has fought harder for disclosure than what you have. And it's just an honor to have you on. And I want to say this as well. I feel privileged, Steve, to have you as a friend as well. Well, to everyone, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be talking about the film that everyone's talking about, and that is The Age of Disclosure. It was a movie that was produced and put together by Dan Farah. In case you don't know who Dan Farah is, he was the producer for the movie Ready Player One, which Steven Spielberg was involved with. Let me tell you something. There is no one bigger than Steven Spielberg. I can tell you that. And so I have the utmost respect for Dan Farah. And so let's begin by asking this question, Steve. What did you think of the film itself?
We've been waiting a long time for that documentary. Now, let's be clear. Over the last, I don't know, go back. I forget when the very first documentary was made about this issue. And I imagine there was something happening back 60, 70 years. But for the last 40 years, for sure, we made our own docs. People taught themselves how to use Final Cut Pro and cameras and whatever, interviewed people, did research, and we created our own docs. We created hundreds of them. I call them citizen docs because they were pretty much made by just regular people, not career individuals, which obviously is what Hollywood is all about. And they weren't too bad, but they could, there were the limitations, and hundreds of them. And that's helped to educate the public. Now, when streaming came along and it's possible for those citizen docs to get an even broader audience, that was even better. So that advanced the issue some more. And we're still making citizen docs, and I'm sure there's 4, 5, 6, 7 of them in the works. But what we didn't get was a industry doc, a Hollywood doc. In other words, the people with the money, the top post-production, pre-production people, the ability to have agents and managers and all the things that you need to really maximize a film that you're making. And all of those people in Hollywood were making tons of movies about extraterrestrials. 600 by my count since 52, 51. And they made hundreds of millions of dollars. It's hard to really say how many hundreds of millions. That was a lot. It's a big number. It's the highest grossing genre, I think, in all of film. Some of a significant number of the top films of all time gross in terms of gross are not just sci-fi films, but sci-fi films with ETs in them of one form or another. And great, but they didn't make any docs. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that, but one is docs can be tricky. Because if you want to put a doc out for a lot of screens, you've got to do a lot of advertising. So it's expensive, right? It might only cost $7 million to make the documentary, but if you really want to make it a film, a full-fledged film, you're going to spend probably much more than that just to advertise it. So that's just not something that's done. So not too many docs get a full screen premiere type situation. It does happen. One of the most famous examples of this was Fahrenheit 9/11, which did get a huge screening, very sizable, and it's made a fortune. Cost $7 million, and it's now made almost $400 million, adjusted for inflation. So it's possible, but the other reason they wouldn't do it is that simply they didn't want to upset the government. In other words, we start making docs and putting them up on these big screens and promoting them. We're literally promoting the disclosure movement. We're promoting the effort by citizens to end this truth embargo. And that's going to make the government mad. And we don't want to do that. We're doing very well, thank you. So why do we need that problem? Not to mention the fact that we make tons of films that have got ships and planes and boats and submarines and everything else. And we really use their help. They cooperate with us a lot. And so they just didn't make them.
Let me ask a question. How does this film and the impact it has, how does that compare to your 2013 citizen hearings that you had in DC at the National Press Club? What, kind of break that down and then tell us the difference between 2013 and 2025. Why was this the right time for this film to come out, this documentary to come out?
Well, I don't know about the right time, though the timing is fortuitous in a way. But this should have been done decades ago. This issue should have been getting documentaries up on those screens a long time ago, because they would have made money, at least in limited production, in terms limited airing. So in terms of my citizen hearing, this documentary is magnitudes more important. My citizen hearing in 2013 helped move things along, and it was designed to play right into the campaign of 2016, because I was aware of all of the interactions that the Clinton people had on this issue, going all the way back to 1993. And I knew that we could create a situation where she would be talking about it, and it could lead to something profound if she won the presidency. But she didn't. So citizen hearing on disclosure is up on YouTube. I think it's pretty much for free now. And it is probably my greatest accomplishment, but nothing compared to this film. So, to complete what I was saying, these are the reasons why major creation of film content would just simply not give these docs that kind of airing. But finally, the stars aligned, and Dan Farah, who is a Hollywood person, I would an industry person, who has engaged the issue a little bit. He's talked to people. I think he worked with James Fox on a doc and some others. So he's familiar with those other docs. He decided to make his doc, and he didn't go with the studio. He went on his own, which is smart, because that limited any problems that the sensitive studios would have about offending the U.S. government. So it took 3 years. So they put it together. It was key to that was Luis Elizondo, who we know is involved in this issue big time, knows a lot of the people. And so he was the one that could start bringing in the people he wanted to interview. And that just built. You get one, somebody else says, okay, I'm on, and just work your way up. And he worked his way up to 34 plus individuals that he could put in that doc. And by the way, the original, I think, assemblage was 4 hours. He had to cut it down almost over 2 hours. So I suspect there's another doc on the works. So the two of them put together this documentary. And then Dan, because he's got, and it knows the business, knows his way around, he did what you do to get it to where it is. First, he puts it in the second largest film festival in the country, South by Southwest. South by Southwest gets a little feedback there, exposure. Possibly after that, they're trying to do a marketing thing, sell it, whatever. I don't know. But a year goes by, and a decision was made, and he launches it in 3 theaters in 3 different cities. The theaters are the Angelica theaters, which I didn't know about. They're kind of cool. They're called Angelica pop-ups, and they're pretty nice. They're very cool. They're not the fancy stuff, but they remind me of a bygone era, and it's just fun to go there. So I saw it at the Angelica premiere in Washington, and they're running it for a whole week, and that satisfies the necessary conditions for it to be nominated for an Oscar. So it will be in the mix along with 200 other documentaries. That is a milestone. It's not non-trivial. That is a milestone that we can build on, and it's something that we should be proud of. And of course, Dan Farah and Elizondo get I think the lion's share of the credit. Now, could the doc be nominated? Only in this way. There are many in those 200 docs that are really extraordinary. I mean, in terms of the presentation and in terms of, the sum and total of the doc, how they really get to you, maybe they get emotional and so forth. So they're highly skilled, and that's good. This does not have that. It's not that kind of doc. It's good. It's well done. But the issue that it's dealing with is more important than every one of the other docs issues combined. So if things happen between now and when they start making selections, which is another 3 or 4 weeks or so, 5 weeks, it's possible that the importance of this film will register with the people that are making decisions about which ones do they advance to the next 15. And it might make it based upon the fact of how important it is, because that is one of the ways docs become get nominated and win, because they're so damn important. And this one is important as it gets. So that he did that. All right.
It's #1 on Amazon right now, right? The movie.
I don't know. There's so many ways this is handled.
No, this is important though, because this is $20 a pop. This is not a cheap movie to rent. And to find out that it was #1, Steve, it's just kind of, building and everything you're saying is supporting the fact that this movie is probably going to go to the next level.
Hopefully. All right. But again, it's also, you also got to rate it by IMDb. You've also got to rate it by Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
And again, we'll see. It's still getting out there. It's still spreading. But what we do know, because Dan Farah has got all the bells and whistles and agents and contacts and everything else, kind of as a one-man promotional tour, he's able to get on Bill Maher leading up to the film. Gee, that's not easy. He got the coveted 10-minute introduction video. Interview. Forgive me. I have done so many interviews. Losing my voice and my brain, I think, is following. And in that interview, which was fantastic, Maher clearly showed that he's come around on this thing. His skepticism is way, way down. He asked some very important questions. I think he brought up the nuclear tampering issue, which brought that into play, which is huge, right? And that show, Real Time with Bill Maher, is the highest viewed show on Netflix in terms of cumulative views. How about that? It'll eventually be millions and millions. It also then airs on CNN, gets about 1 million views there. And so in addition to that, there is a after show called, it slips my mind, but there's a 10-minute show goes online. Okay. That all the guests chat about it for a while, and of course, Farah was there, and some more things were said. That goes up on their YouTube channel, Real Time with Bill Maher YouTube channel, and that has 2,000,003 subscribers, and wow. The views of those after shows, as well as some of his new rules, as you go back in time, they get up to 25, 30 million views. And that'll be up there going forward. So he set in motion right there, not only a substantial promotion leading into the film, but a continued promotion that'll go on for years, accumulating views. That is what happens when you get the professional end doc done. All right. So he did that. Then what happens after that? Go on Rogan. Why not?
Yeah.
Goes on Rogan for 2 hours. It doesn't happen too often where the director and writer of a film puts it right out and this goes right on Joe Rogan within a couple of days, because that is going to sell a lot of movies. And I don't think Joe sees himself as like just a marketing arm for anybody. But the thing is that Joe is aware of this issue. He has interviewed me a long, long time ago when he had another show. I think it was called Joe Rogan Questions Everything. He's gone a long way since then, I assure you. But he's had other people on. He had Anna Paulina Luna on. So he's getting educated on this issue. And he knows how important it is. So he brings them on 2 hours. You don't think that's not going to advance this film? And so this film is, you could almost say that we have gotten right up to the door of the truth embargo to go in and end it. And of course, by that, I mean the president's going to step out and end it. But it's a glass door and it's heavy glass. So we've been kind of, knocking on it here for a while. I think this movie is a hammer and just took to the glass door and just shattered it. And now it's just a matter of going in, cleaning this up. That's how big it is. So I invite people absolutely to watch it. I know it's a little expensive, but they can't do full screening. He wants to do a follow-up film. And so every dollar you spend on renting or buying that film is going to help make a second film, which is going to have even more stuff in it, and help end the truth embargo. So look at it that way.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question, because that kind of fits into one of the questions I had for you. Farah had mentioned, and I guess it's in the film as well, that Bush 2, because you talk about Clinton was going to do it if she had gotten elected. Bush 2 supposedly was going to do it, and he put together a think group, and they basically said because of the economy would struggle, and because of society as a whole, they didn't think we were ready for it. And then again, what he said was under Trump's first administration that he was wanting to do it, but then he got some advisors together and they told him the same thing. And so, Steve, what's the difference between then and now? Why are we ready now? Why would they look at it? Why would Trump give the green light now where he didn't give it before?
Well, first of all, my take from the film was not that they were saying that Trump wanted to do it. And in terms of
that's what Farah said himself on one of the interviews. He flat out.
Oh, and in an interview. Okay, well, that's a separate matter. We were talking about the film.
Yeah.
But that's, well, yeah, we can talk. Well, that doesn't shock me. It wasn't in the film, but that doesn't shock me. But let's go back to the Bush thing. What they said was that he was approached, and they discussed it, right, and ultimately didn't do it. But let us not forget, almost certainly that approach was in the earliest days of his when he came into office. And one of the reasons that Bush clearly would have had some knowledge about this, maybe even a lot, because of his father. His father was H.W. Bush, and if anybody wasn't relatively well briefed on this issue, it had to be H.W. Bush. So he chose not to do anything, but he had knowledge. And I can't believe he didn't provide at least some sense of what the situation was to his son as he's approaching the presidency. And so I think Bush W. did have some sense of it. They talked about the idea in the early part of the administration, but let us not forget, later that year, you have 9/11.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, they didn't necessarily plan on making a decision right away. They're going to consider it. But once 9/11 happened, that's off the table. So that opportunity was gone. When Clinton comes in, a new effort is made. This is from Lawrence Rockefeller, to try to possibly see if the Clinton administration could move forward and get this taken care of. It was a significant effort. It went on for 3 years. Ultimately, though, didn't work. The DOD was not going to allow it, right? They might have allowed George W. Bush to move forward on that and say, look, let's do this. And they might have said, okay, W, no problem. But Clinton, there is no way the Department of Defense was going to let Clinton disclose the ET presence. And they were going to do everything they could to block that. And they did a hell of a lot. So we got that. Now we move forward. Okay. And as it happens, the situation with respect to the timing of this movie pretty much fits well into the situation in the White House. Now they're separate. They're not really related, and except in a somewhat abstract way. But as it happens, this film drops just about at the perfect time with respect to the White House, which is where disclosure must come from. It is the confirmation by the head of state. Other people have said there's ETs here. They were astronauts. They were pilots. They were, high-level people. It didn't matter. That's not going to get us into the post-disclosure world. And so the situation with Trump, as I've talked about many times, is interesting. We know that it was kind of brought up in his first term. I think there were a couple of questions that were asked. I think his son indicated that he might have said something to him. Nothing huge, but it was there. It was there. Now, don't be surprised that then they didn't do anything about that. No way. And then 8 years go by, including another presidency, and he comes back in. The situation has gotten very, very different. In those 8 years, Trump, who was probably given some information, they talked a little bit about it, had 8 years to contemplate that. Meanwhile, in those 8 years, you know how much has happened. I mean, my Lord. Trump takes office in early 17. The To the Stars Academy comes out, and the New York Times articles hit later that year. And then we've been on a steady ramp heading up towards ending this truth embargo ever since. More has happened since he was elected the first time than in the 70 years prior to that, going back to Roswell. And so over those 8 years, he's picking up things here and there and what have you. And then he comes back into the office. All right. Now, by the time he gets back into the office, man, we've had 4 pieces of legislation submitted, 3 passed. We've had, let me see. Well, so this is. Let me see when he comes in. Second time he comes back in 2020. We've had 3 hearings, 6 briefings. Members of Congress have gone public and said flat out on camera that there's something here. This is real, and this is very likely not human. And we've had huge amounts of media coverage, and we've had a number of people go in public that weren't in Congress and say absolutely, there's ETs here. Carl Nell went on was at a conference and looked at the camera and said, no doubt.
So,
and there's organizations forming and evidence is coming forward and it's advancing since he took office. So it shouldn't surprise anybody that something is going on in the White House. And as I've said now many times, I'll repeat it. It's not like I'm guessing. So here's the quick picture, very fast. 5 days before the inauguration, his son with Triggered Podcast, which has a lot of subscribers because his father actually promotes it on his YouTube channel. He just happens to bring on Elizondo and Coulthard. Elizondo, key to this movie. Okay. And that was just a year ago. And so they bring him on, talk about it for 2 hours. And then his father gets inaugurated. That's no accident. That wasn't like a scheduling coincidence. 5 months go by, and what happens? J.D. Vance comes on the Ruthless podcast and says, I'm obsessed with UFOs and other things. That's no accident. Shortly after that, Tulsi Gabbard, who's director of national intelligence, goes on. She's talking about the subject. That's no accident. And then a week or 2 later, Anna Paulina Luna goes on Joe Rogan and gets into the issue in a 2-hour interview. No accident. These aren't just any people in the administration. These are key people in the administration, the Congress of the current presidency. And then just about 10 days ago, J.D. Vance goes back on another podcast, Pod Force One, and repeats his interest in the subject and happens to mention that his very good friend, Marco Rubio, is also very much into the subject. And that was about, I don't know, maybe a week or so before the movie hit. Of course, he knew that Rubio was going to be in it. I'm surprised J.D. Vance wasn't in it. So let's be clear. None of this happens unless this issue is absolutely being considered in the White House. And all of these podcast thingies is the way things are handled these days. You want to make a big move, you send out people to mention it on podcasts and you read the room.
So is it coordinated then?
Absolutely. And you read the room and you see how the comments go and how the reaction is. Well, the reactions have been just fine. All of these people are getting grief, right, because of their activities as members of the administration. But they're not getting grief, at least not until a new development, which I'll talk about in a second, on this issue. And so as far as I'm concerned, The president of the United States has gotten a relatively straightforward message that there is no real downside to him to step out in the into the Oval Office tomorrow. I would suggest he do it from the Oval Office. No press, just cameras. An announcement ahead of time, something big's coming, and the truth embargo, which all he has to do is says, yeah, that what you're hearing about non-human tech and non-human bodies obtained by our government is true, and you're going to know a lot about that soon. But all you need to know now is that it is true. Start paying attention, and that's it. And then go to bed. He doesn't have to start telling people stuff. Well, let me tell you about this and that. No, not at all. Just end the damn truth embargo and go to bed and get a good night's sleep. And then the next day, you will wake up and discover the world is on fire, that other heads of state are contemplating coming forward, and that people are already talking Nobel Prize. And you have a legacy that will be talked about for 1,000 years, long after everything else negative attendant to your terms as president are simply forgotten. That's where we are. That's how close we are.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, the next question that, let me get us both back on here, that I'm wondering about, and I'm sure a lot of other people are wondering about, let's just go in a scenario that Trump decides against it. Isn't that dangerous? Isn't it dangerous when you think about the fact that you've got China and you've got Russia out there with their own reverse engineering programs? I heard Farah talking about it. Basically, they don't have a lot of the restrictions that we have. In fact, I think it was Lou Elizondo who said that the secrecy we have, this denial and ridicule, is a national security threat. And so, Steve, what does the world look like? Not only if Xi or Putin come out first, but what does the world look like if they get the breakthrough before we do? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a big question, and it's a big world. So I can't tell what the world looks like. I can tell you what the immediate situation looks like. And so if Ping or Putin, right? I actually went to Moscow and gave an interview talking about how Putin could be the disclosure president, and they let me leave.
Wow,
that was back in 2000 and what was it? 2018, right? Early 2018. It's up on my website, still out there. Look, if Putin or Bing disclose the same, or either one of them goes first, that they wake up the next day to the same thing that I just described with our president. A massive event, world on fire, right? Accolades pouring in, right? And then our president will have to follow. And then he will also confirm it. He will be second. And there will be no prize. There will be no accolades. There will be a hell of a lot of people of various levels, rank, station, and general public saying, why didn't you do this first? And it's not going to be like, he can go and say, I had no idea. No, all the stuff that I'm talking about and much more is going to be brought up. It's going to be in video. It's going to be in the internet. And they're going to say, look, how about this. You knew. Why didn't you do it? That will be bad for him. Now, in terms of the world, it doesn't matter. In terms of where we're going to go as a civilization and the prospects of open contact with ETs very soon, it doesn't matter which head of state goes first, because ultimately the ETs are engaging the whole planet, not just the United States. You can be sure of that.
Right.
And we'll move forward, and it will be the post-disclosure world. It's going to be great. It's just that our president will not be getting the accolades, and to what extent that affects our image or our posture, internationally, I don't know.
Well,
right? That's beyond my pay grade.
Well, let me ask you a question, because it just came to my mind and I wanted to ask it because I'm sure somebody else is thinking about it. If, as Farah says, that Russia and China have an advantage about the way they're taking reverse engineering, crash retrieval, all that, and we're at a disadvantage because of our compartmentalization and because the stigma and ridicule, do they really have an incentive to come out and do it? I just want to get your perspective on
I
that.
don't see it that way. We've always known. I think that our government's always known that China and Soviet Union and Russia have accessed this. They knew
Right.
about it early on. Well, certainly Soviet Union did. China was in a very different place back then, but eventually it caught up. And if they've got any crash vehicles, and they very likely do, they're working on them and re-engineering them, just like us. So that's always been an issue.
But why
Now,
would they go
whether they are,
forward, though? The
you know,
question is, why would they come forward if they have an advantage in doing that, getting ahead of us in the process? If they came out and then all of a sudden that opened the door for us to put all of our resources into it, wouldn't that be a disadvantage for them?
but I don't think they have an advantage.
Mm.
Look, they are ideological controlled states.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they want to study this tech, whatever they want to do, they're going to make it secret. And I think you could say the one advantage they have is that if you're the Soviet Union and you want to keep all your ET activity secret, you have the one advantage. If anybody wants to write a book, do a documentary, or so forth, and that threatens your program, they will suddenly just disappear. In the United States, we don't have that advantage. However, we built a national security and military intelligence complex and a classification schema so huge, so almost impenetrable, that it's not much different here than it is there. The only difference is that the citizens of this country had the ability to keep pushing at the government, and the government pushed back. But I don't think it slowed down the research. And it's also the case that we have some of the best scientists, and we're a massive economy. China didn't become that until much later. And so the idea that they kind of raced ahead of us, no, I don't think that's the case at all. They will come forward at the moment they realize that this thing is about to go. I'm sure they're watching us very carefully. And one of them is going to decide this thing is about to go, so it's going to happen. Why shouldn't it be me? China is a 4,000-year-old civilization. It probably is the biggest economy in the world. Very proud of its history. It's building up its military. It has the largest navy in the world. And so the idea that they would shyly kind of step back and defer to the United States on a matter of great importance, I'm not seeing that.
Oh, world history too.
If I'm the president's advisors, I say, you do not want to be second on this. Don't listen to the Department of Defense.
What if Xi and Putin's advisors are right now? You think maybe the movie Age of Disclosure has gotten over to Russia and China by now? And if it has, don't you think they're having the same exact discussions there that Trump's having here?
Of course, it got over immediately. The thing has been promoted for weeks and weeks and weeks. Articles have been written up on. I got 100 articles at least have been written up on this going back months. Of course, they know it's coming.
Why don't you promote PRG real quick with that to help people understand how valuable PRG is as far as these resources that you're just now talking about, the ones that you archive there. Why don't you just take a second or two, just explain the value of that?
Well, look, I make a small contribution. I have an archive that I've worked on for 19 years. Don't ask me why. I have OCD, and it makes me feel better. But I've using the internet, I have linked to what I consider mainstream journalist articles about this subject, not the silly stuff on the far fluffy or whatever. Legitimate journalistic articles, and I started that in 2006, and I call it the print media archive, and it's on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, under projects, ongoing. I'm now up to 17,000 articles.
Wow!
And in terms of all of the articles, using the search capabilities of the internet, all of the articles that I've actually kind of, is that acceptable? Is that acceptable? And I mean, is the venue appropriate or not? That 17,000 is probably triaged out of 100,000 or more.
Mm.
Now, that's not a big deal. I'm simply saying that, it's not, I'm just picking stuff out of nowhere. So it's up to 17,000, and that's just English language press. I can't access foreign press articles because you can't, searching in foreign language and everything. So it's 17,000 articles. And now, right now, the issue that's getting the most media coverage, it's huge, but I'm not putting it up because it's not relevant, is AI Atlas, or 3i Atlas. The interest in the ET issue and extraterrestrials, in case anybody hasn't figured it out, is huge. It's massive. And it's worldwide. And so when this thing turned up, the third, what we'll call transient object, extrasolar comet, it had a little bit unusual makeup, so it wasn't acting just like a comet. We went nuts. It could be ET, it could be ET. And the articles are just pouring out. So if I'm the president, that's one clue to me. Hey, everybody's ready for this. Now it's just a damn comet. It's going to cruise through and it's going to go on for another 20 million or billion years. God knows, until it really runs into something, which it may never do. But again, the articles and the coverage was a clear message to I think the public and to journalists and politicians. They really are interested in this issue, and we actually have extraterrestrials here. And the government knows about it. You need to tap into all that fantastic interest. It would probably be a plus. Public would probably be very appreciative. They might even vote for you. And so, but now this age of disclosure will probably surpass it in the number of articles I eventually log in. I have got something like 120 I've got to put up. I'm backed up, but I'm going to get to it. But it's not an easy thing to do, and I'm not in a position to hire somebody. I've never been in a position to hire somebody. So I do it myself. But one of the reasons I do it myself is that this is how I acquaint myself with it. I'm literally seeing the flow. I read some of them as I go. So it is an interface between me and the entire issue and the journalistic engagement of it. So, you've got many organizations now coming in to push this. The New Paradigm Institute has got a full-blown citizen disclosure effort underway. Something I couldn't do because I didn't have the connections or the money. But Danny Sheehan and his people, they're really on top of this. Plus, he's also involved in the legislation to some degree. Other organizations are formed: the Soul Foundation, the UAP Foundation, UAP Disclosure Fund, and others that I can't even keep up with. All of that is springing out of the fact that we have kind of crossed into the final end game. We are in the end game right now, and I cannot even keep up with the developments.
Okay, let's just take this from a skeptic's perspective. The first thing that skeptics are going to come after on this film is going to be the fact that it doesn't appear that there wasn't any, voices, dissenting voices out there. And do you think that's a fair complaint?
No.
You don't? Okay.
No.
So why or why not? That's what my question was going to be.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of scientists get together to explain a major new finding. Right? They discovered a special particle, and they're going to come out and tell you about this, right? And people get upset. But wait a minute, where are the scientists out there that believe that's nothing, right? They think you're a bunch of crooks, grifters, right? They don't like you. So why aren't they there talking too? No. If the detractor, and by the way, I'm going to talk about this because there is a significant development going on. But if the detractors who have always been there want those voices, hold a conference, hold an event, and bring them in. Make your own doc with all the dissenting voices. There's been a little of that. But I'm sorry. This issue was proven 78, almost 90, 80 years ago, right? And so it's not about proving it anymore. It never has been. And the only reason that, other people would say, no, it hasn't been proved, is the government spent a fortune with massive disinformation, propaganda, interference, obfuscation to give out the sense to the world and the journalists that, no, it hasn't been proved yet. They deliberately interfered with the truth process. If they had done that with atomic physics, we might not have had any nuclear bombs, right? Or if they'd done it with other medical, but they don't do that. Governments are not supposed to interfere with the scientific process or the proof process. But they did in this case. We know why. That's ancient history. So now we're going to go forward. So here is a development I invite people to pay attention to, because it's going to get interesting. There are two kinds of people. There are people that watch TV, and there are people and read newspapers, and there are people that are on the internet, right? That's where they get their action. And there are people actually that are on both, okay? But so you got three kinds of people, all right? And so for most of the history of this issue, the debunking, the skepticism was coming through an article, maybe in the paper, an article in a journal for a skeptical organization, kind of limited, maybe even a book for most of this time. And then sometimes they would get on television. And there were a limited number of what we'll call true heavy-duty skeptics, Phil Klass being a perfect example.
Right.
He was like the leader for decades. And then we moved into another era, the era of the internet, and then the era of social media, and the era of the podcast. So that is the era that the end game of this 80-year effort is taking place. All right. So not surprising, it is a very different thing happening than you might have seen if it had taken place 60 years ago. So what's going on? Here's what's going on. Look at it this way. It's kind of like the situation where you got an air fight going on between a couple of fighters, and one of the fighters gets the jet gets hit, and the guy's got to bail. So he bails out, and he just needs to get to the ground. Right? Once he gets to the ground, he's cold. Unfortunately, for the entire time he's floating down, he could not be more vulnerable. He is very, very vulnerable. And in the war, some winning pilots would strafe the parachutist, some would not. And there was some of that on both sides, all sides, right? But that's the metaphor. So what has happened here is that essentially we have reached a point where we're almost there, right? And the thing is exploding out. But we're not there yet. We're in between that plane and the ground because we haven't got disclosure. And this is when we're very vulnerable. And so what is happening because of the internet, all of the people that hate this issue and all of the people that hate the government and think it lies all the time, which, so it's two groups. Some or both, but whatever, are taking advantage of that, and they're moving in to strafe this issue and the people in it, everybody in it. And as it happens, at this particular time, we are living in a world where virtually anybody with a computer that can have software, access AI, and other stuff is able to create some pretty damn good parody. In other words, it's not just, you don't have to be Matt Stone and Trey Walker and create a South Park. You can put together some pretty good stuff and parody people hard. It's got all the bells and whistles. And so this is starting to happen. You're seeing AI created cartoon videos that are kind of funny, but now you're starting to see full-blown videos, which just tear everything apart, go after everybody, make fun of them, parody them. Okay. But this is serious stuff. And people really some of the people that hate this issue are serious. And some of the people that hate the government think it's lying. And so it's not just they're having fun and parodying everybody in this field and the issue itself. It's filled with a good amount of defamation. Right.
Okay. Well, this is I was going to ask another skeptic question. I'll try to bring that back later if I can remember it. But this leads right into where I was wanting to go with this. Farah talked a lot about the need for amnesty. Mm-hmm. If Trump comes out and reveals that we're not alone, then why would amnesty be necessary? And how far do we go on amnesty? I mean, I want to say this. It's one thing if they ruin somebody's career. It's one thing if they took away their security clearance. But what if they killed somebody? I mean, there are reports out there. I don't know if they're accurate or not. There's a lot of people that believe they are. But are we really going to give people amnesty for murder? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I am ready for this question because I've been talking about this for 28 years. You go watch, if somebody goes back and bothers to watch the 1,500 plus interviews I've done, you're going to see me talking amnesty over and over again, year after year. Yes. These amnesty, truth and reconciliation is probably not going to be able to really move forward until after disclosure. It's just, they're not going to happen before. And so disclosure is necessary.
Why do we need it, Steve, though? That's the question. If Trump comes out and says that we're not alone, and big D disclosure has happened, then why do we need amnesty at that point? What's the purpose of it?
It's there's several reasons. Okay. There's two levels of this. The amnesty, as far as I'm concerned, refers to individuals who, in the post-disclosure era, right, are going to have to come forward and explain what they were involved in, what they were doing, right, the programs, and answer whatever appropriate questions. And it may be that what they were doing was perhaps against the law, but they were doing what they were told to do.
Right.
This isn't quite like the situation with soldiers in battle. You can't you can't obey an illegal order. Not when you're talking about the massive intelligence complex with all of that stuff. No, but so they're doing what they're told to do in a secret programs with classification schemes. But then when it comes out, it turns out, well, that's illegal. So amnesty is about saying anybody that in proper process of telling and providing the information we want post-disclosure, it looks as if there might be a legal liability, they have amnesty automatically. Boom, that's it. Now, that's level 1, but there's level 2. So you would have an amnesty legislation, but then you have to have a truth and reconciliation legislation. And that is a situation where, as this information comes out, it is clear that somebody definitely did something very bad, knew it was bad, and the question of amnesty is taken off the table, meaning it's just too much. In other words, killing somebody. And there's also somebody they might have made the decision to do it, but it turns out it really wasn't what was wanted. Anyway, they did something that's clearly could put them in jail for a long time. That's where truth and reconciliation comes in. Now, why? Because it's very similar to the South Africa situation after the change of government. South Africa went through hell. Untold awful things were done. And now they had a chance to have a new government, and they have a chance to fix those things. But in order to do it, they need the people involved in apartheid to be able to give them clear information about what happened, who, when, what, and why. So that not only they can make decisions, but also that maybe family members of those that were suffered will have some relief. But they knew that if they were going to make this a legal thing, it would drag out forever. And they wanted to start a new country. And so they, under the Desmond Tutu led the effort for amnesty information legislation in South Africa. Everybody involved in apartheid could come forward and say, anybody could come forward and they might say, look, I was involved in a situation where we poisoned 35 people, or we locked them up and whatever, and half of them died. They were going to be resolved. They had to tell everything. They had to tell everything that happened, and they would be reconciled to society. Now, that doesn't mean their life is going to be wonderful. They may have some issues because people don't like that. But in terms of legal action by the state, reconciled. This is the same exact thing. Disclosure and moving on with post-disclosure world and starting to make the changes that we've got to do or we're done is so important that spending effort and time and money trying to pry out of individuals the information in lawsuits and courts and everything else is not in our interest. And so we need truth and reconciliation. Whatever you did that might really put you in jeopardy, I'm talking about at a level way above the amnesty platform. This law, you are reconciled if you provide all the information. Now, if you come forward and provide only half of it and lie a little bit, and that gets found, probably you've exempted yourself from truth and reconciliation. And so it's not perfect, but a lot more information will be had sooner without the cost. And we move forward together as a country in a new time and a new place. That is the reason for those two legislations, and I support both.
What's the advantage of doing that? Or the disadvantage, whichever way you want to go at it. Once we have disclosure, once it's out there, what makes that information so valuable if we are ready? I guess that's the question I'm trying to get at is, we're going to give up something. And they're never, you have to agree with this, they're never going to, at least until they're ready, they're not going to show us this tech. They're going to guard it. They got every incentive in the world, because there are some things going on, monopolies going on by, whoever's reverse engineering right now. So from our end, I can understand from their end that they would like to get out from underneath this. They would like to not have these criminal charges on them.
Yeah.
But how does it help us? I mean, I can
Again,
understand getting more information by them coming forward and saying and telling us everything they did. What's the advantage for society as a whole, for America as a whole?
Look, we're talking about post-disclosure here.
Right.
This is a moot point. So the post-disclosure has taken place. The UAP Disclosure Act is in full force. Stuff is coming forward substantially. Other nations are getting involved. They're releasing things. And so now we're in a situation where the U.S. government is going to provide everything it can to the American people under an orderly process. And the American people is going to want it.
So this is part of disclosure is what you're saying. This would be part of the natural unfolding after Trump comes forward of revealing all the details. That's where the amnesty comes in.
Yeah, it's after the disclosure, capital D,
right,
is the confirmation event from the heads of state. Once that happens, we're in the post-disclosure world. Then small d disclosure, which has been going on since Roswell, will accelerate and provide quite a bit more in a short amount of time. We want to know as much as possible. Now, a lot of what we need to know is in the brains of people, in the heads of people that were involved in these programs, and we need to know. And if we're going to threaten them with life in prison, they're not going to tell us. Then we're going to have to investigate these situations and spend a fortune on that, and we have to go to court, spend a fortune on the trials. And then the more that we press that way, we're scaring people away. They're going to drop out of society, disappear, move to an island in the Pacific. It will slow everything down. It will cost a lot when what people just want to know, what they want is just to know. They want to know how it went down, what's going on, what did we learn, right? We also need to know how the truth embargo was maintained for 80 years so that it doesn't happen again, so that we can help reform the intelligence structures that we have created as part of the military intelligence community. We need that information from the heads of people, and we can get it quickly if we passed amnesty and truth and reconciliation. It is in the best interest of the entire country and to some degree the world. And so it's a slam dunk.
Well, would it also help in the issue of, we know that this stuff's in the hands of a few companies, Lockheed Martin, whatever. If this truth and reconciliation comes along, wouldn't it make it like a fair process after that? And then we'd have more companies bidding. There probably would help in the effort of reverse engineering if we did that.
Well, first of all, the defense contractors are going to be, I'm not too worried about them. Amnesty may apply, may not. Mostly they're just going to have to start bringing out what they know, and we're going to learn what they've done. So I don't think that's an issue. And by the way, there may be aspects of this that are completely unknown.
Right.
That kind of disappeared in the mist a long time ago. And they're sitting back there thinking, well, nobody knows about us. Hey, we can just keep doing our thing. And they're looking out, but they're seeing that, we're being responsible about this. We're not trying to sue our way to this information. We're not threatening people's lifestyles and whatever, because this issue is too important. They may go, okay, look, looks like we could come forward. It's not going to be a problem. So let's come forward. And so that may give us an additional stuff. The one thing I can provide to most people is this: if you're trying to assess what could happen, should happen, and you don't have a pretty substantial knowledge of the history of this, and you don't have yet been able to develop an appreciation for how important it is, it's more it's not easy to then decide, what ought to happen, what should happen, what we do. I get it. But once someone grasps the profoundness of this issue, the implications for the entire human race and the planet, then you start to put it in the right perspective and realize that all this other stuff is completely subservient to that. And so we need to get disclosure. We need to get in the post-disclosure world. We need to get the tech. We need to learn as much as we can of what happened, including as much as we can about the ETs. The contactees know a lot about that, but until we get disclosure, most people are not going to listen to them. After disclosure, they're going to really want to listen to them. And so it's just going to be, we move into a new time, a new era. So that's what this is about. And, so amnesty is appropriate, and so is truth and reconciliation. And I expect it will happen. You will get that legislation.
Okay. You're clearly thinking ahead, and it made me think of one of the questions I had. If you got enough time, we got a couple more, but
Yeah, sure. Let's
I
play
was
it
just
out.
thinking about Paradigm Research Group and the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Once we get to big D disclosure, what are your plans? Are you going to be like, hey, my job's done, I can finally go on vacation? Are you going to ride off into the sunset, or are you going to morph your companies and make them more geared towards something like contact?
Well, look,
what's your plan after disclosure?
Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and the Paradigm Research Group are both nonprofits.
Right.
So in a post-disclosure world, we're hoping that the ability to get sponsors, tax-deductible funding, so we can do a lot more things, will obviously change. So that's number one. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is really well positioned because obviously the demand for content post-disclosure is going to be massive. And HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org was created for one thing and one thing only: to help film people, content people, and UAP people find each other, get together, get to be friends, cook up deals, make documentaries, and whatever else. Because these two groups have primarily been separated, right? In other words, we're going to make these fictional movies. We're going to make a fortune. You guys are going to make your docs. You're not going to make anything, but let's don't get together because the issue is still a little touchy. That's changing. And so the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance could play a role. It's up to 240 members and make it to 1,000 members post-disclosure. That'd be great. Okay. And maybe get some funding and some sponsorship, which we can't get right now, because again, there's still stigma attached to this issue, I assure you. And as I said, the internet skeptics and government haters, which there's a legitimate reason to hate the government, but it's mostly about the government lies and manipulates. They're going to be raining down parity on us. And that's not going to stop until disclosure takes place. So we're going to have a little bumpy ride here. I invite people, don't react. Enjoy it, laugh. In other words, if you expect the government, the U.S. government administration right now to be able to, have to deal with South Park and try to laugh that off, let me tell you, then this is not that hard. That's parity at another level, right? That's pro parity. But it's going to be raining down. It's going to be battles on the internet, people pissing on each other, blocking each other. This is happening. I'm watching it in real time, and it's going to grow because we're vulnerable right now. It hasn't been proven. Then all of this stuff that's happening is bullshit, right? Right. And so this person is lying. That person is a grifter, blah, blah, blah. And because there are no ETs here, therefore that must be the case. Or maybe there's ETs here. People may believe that, but these are government people. So they're lying. They're not going to tell you the truth about it. I don't believe a thing they said. And so this is what's happening because it's not resolved. We are hanging between two cliffs. We got to swing hard enough to get to the other side. While we're hanging out there, people are going to shoot arrows at us. I expect it. I'm going to be cool with it. But not everybody is going to be cool with it. So that's one of the messages I want to get out today for those that are on the net a lot and social media. Mostly my attention is on X. I'm not a TikTok guy, not the Instagram. I don't know what's going on there. I doubt it's like X because X is kind of a special place. And there's certain things that pretty much happen here that may not happen elsewhere. But we'll see.
You're
So
definitely on
we're in the last
TikTok. You're definitely on TikTok. I put the clips on there. So
well, I'm on somebody else's TikTok, but are there flame wars going on in TikTok where people say,
right.
you guys are no, that's X. So I'm keeping close tabs on that, and we'll see how it goes. I hope hey, the president can end all that nonsense tomorrow. Just walk into the Oval Office. Tell us what millions already know is true, but give it to us from them, knowing that once you do that, we're going to get the rest. Right? Because once that Disclosure Act is passed, the UAP Disclosure Act, anybody that wants to sit on their special stuff is going to go to jail. In other words, after we get disclosure, you can pass amnesty and you can pass the Truth and Reconciliation, but that is all about what happened before. Once we're in the post-disclosure world, if you decide to go rogue, take your lab and move it to Fiji or something so you could do more stuff on ET Tech, they're going to find you, they're going to bring you back, and you go to federal prison. This is going to be serious stuff. Post-disclosure, the American people, the world's people, are not going to tolerate any more of this crap. They know how they will really understand how important it is. And so if you want to play the same games, you're going to end up going to jail instead of being part of maybe the remaking of civilization, which is kind of cool. Part of making a new world, jail. So I'm going to end with this. One of the many things that's happening, you can't even keep the research of Villarreal at the Nordic Institute of Astrophysics, the emergence of telepathy is confirmed, all this stuff. One of the things that's happening, and it's so much, is another conference was put together for December. It's called the State of the World Forum, perfectly named. It is stateoftheworld.forum, or just Google the name. It's a major conference online, 3 days. It's the return of the State of the World forums that were held in the 1990s, 6 of them, which were very, very heavy events, put together with the help of Gorbachev and the Gorbachev Foundation. And the president of that foundation was Jim Garrison, and he was the president of the State of the World Foundation. They held them on the West Coast. Heads of state, top scientists, all kinds of people, a very high rank of station came to be part of this. And the reason they did is back then people thought that the collapse of the Soviet Union, the end of the Communist Party, was the beginning to maybe get away from the awful situation we were in and deal with the nukes, deal with proxy wars. Optimism was high. And so these events were very well attended. I mean, I think they were charging $5,000 a ticket for one of them. And then things went the other direction. We decided, our leaders or whatever decided, let's have more Cold War, more nukes, more proxy wars. Let's go back to the way it was. It was so wonderful. And then we went through 30 years of this to the point where we're now closer to nuclear war than ever. Another billion or so people, maybe 2 have been added to the population. And we're looking at all kinds of awfulness. However, another major thing is about to happen. Not the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Berlin Wall, but the collapse of the truth embargo. And so Jim has contacted a lot of these people and said, let's start again. Let's start another State of the World Forum. We'll run it until 2030 and bring in people to address where we are and where we can go, covering a range of issues. And what's different from the first State of the World Forum is that there's some new issues. And so in this State of the World Forum, as opposed to the one in the 90s, we're going to be talking psionics, NHI, right? AI, global or Earth intelligence, right? The intelligence that we've been learning about the Gaia. Gaia has been around for a long time, but in that time, we've been studying it. We're starting to learn the amount of intelligence, the amount, the aspects of this that affect us. All of that is going to be covered by 51 panelists over 4 days. So I'm letting you know about that. I'm a co-sponsor. I'm working with them. And so anybody that sees this, go to my website, get my phone number, get my email, contact me and say, I would like to register for that. And I can provide you a code that will save you quite a bit of money. Happy to do it. Right. So that's what I want to end with. Dale, as always, it's wonderful. Love your graphics get better every time I come on. Right. Those leading graphics, man. Everybody can do that now. Isn't that wonderful? Except me. I can't do it. But.
Well, the one thing about it, Steve, you've been on, I think 7 or 8 times now, and I've got a whole playlist just for you. So if anybody wants to get more of Steve Bassett, I've got it on a playlist. I'll add this one to it as well. But Steve, it's always an honor having you on. I mean, you've been at this so long and you have so much wisdom. I mean, you really are, in many ways, I call you Mr. Disclosure, because you have been, adamant. And there have been others that started before you maybe, but there aren't very many around now. I mean, you're one of the last ones standing, and I have the utmost respect for you. And I really appreciate the podcast. I have 1,000 more questions, but we will have to save those for next time.
We'll do.
Anyway,
we'll do more. I'm waiting for that podcast we're going to hold in the post-disclosure world. That's going to be a lot of fun.
That's the one. That's the one. All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We'll talk at you next time. Well, to all of you who've stayed here and made it to the end, I want to tell you how much I appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, let me encourage you to do that. We just finally cracked 1,000. We're on our way to 2,000 now. And I just want to also promote the next podcast coming out. Exactly a week from today, I will be interviewing Christopher Sharp of the Liberation Times. And so that will be at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And so it'll be 6 Eastern time. It will be 11 p.m. London time. And so anyway, you guys have a good day and God bless.
This is the future.